This week on Influence, I'm feeling a glimmer of hope about generative AI for the first time in ever. What's poppin', skibbity toilet Riz? I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be. You know what? For my Halloween costume this year, I usually don't do anything, but I had this thought of being the Hello Fellow Kids guy from the meme, which is of course Steve Buscemi from 30 Rock, and so I would just wear like a red baseball cap turned backwards and I think like a red jacket, and then holding a skateboard by the wheels behind me, and then just sauntering around the neighborhood as my kids trick or treat. And then, of course, I would just be the old man that I am, and then say "Hello, fellow kids" to the trick or treaters, and say phrases like "skibbity, skibbity, riz," and I feel like I would be so self aware that it would work. Like it wouldn't be trying too hard. I would be fully committed to the bit and so meta about it that it would totally slap. That's my plan for Halloween. Will I have the patience and time to put it in motion? Only God can know. For the moment, I am your host, Matt Silverman. Welcome back to the Influence Podcast, the skibbitiest pot. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. We're here for another week. Thank you so much for joining me. And I wanted to share with you that next couple episodes are stacked, my friends. Like legit awesome stuff coming up. I'm going to share 4 upcoming guests with you, and there are even more, and they are also amazing, but they're not 100%. You know, I like to lock them in like 105% committed before I share them with you. Make them sign paperwork, like legal threats. I get 4 to 5 lawyers involved to make sure, like, yes, you are committed, and if you don't show up for this interview, I will sue your ass. So once we lock them in like that, then I can share and get excited about these 4 guests with 2 to 3 more coming up as well that are equally as exciting. But first, let me tell you about Yaya Han. Hopefully I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I'm going to get more details on that before the interview. But she is a professional cosplayer. The internet runs on 2 things. One of them is probably not safe for work, and the other is fandom, my friends, which we have covered so much on this show. I am obsessed with it, and I am also focused on sort of my own blind spots, or rather, I am not focused on them, and I'm trying to carve out time to speak to amazing folks about the things, because like I deeply understand the fandoms that I am in and part of, and the parlance and the way people talk about their favorite video games, movies, podcast, whatever that might be. I like to get in there. I like to lurk. I like to comment and share whatever. And then, of course, for every fandom that you find yourself a part of, there are 6 billion others that are equally as big, if not exponentially larger. So Yaya is a cosplayer in the fantasy, anime, video game fandom worlds. She designs her own costumes, which are way more than just the clothes and the fabric. It's the props, it's the prosthetic sort of ears and makeup and crowns, and like you're looking at her, and it is truly like next level cosplay design stuff. And I was thrilled to connect with her and say, hey, is this a hobby or is this your whole life? And yes, she makes her entire living, I presume, branded content. She goes to all of the conferences, the Comic Cons, the Dragon Cons, anywhere that there is nerdery and video games and LARPing and cosplay, whatever that might be. You're going to find Yaya there. She's a published author. She wrote a book about her endeavors as a costume designer. And it is just this whole universe that she's created around this extraordinary work that she does. So I'm really excited to talk to her. That's coming up in a week or so. And if you have questions about cosplay, or if you are in the cosplay-iverse, please get in touch with me, and I will ask your questions. Best way to do that is to leave a voicemail, 347-871-6548. That phone number is in the show description, in the show notes. Wherever you are listening or watching this, you can find that phone number. Give it a call. No telephones will ring. That is I have to say, no, I do not put my own cell phone number out on the internet. That would be insane. So you can call that number and you can leave a voice message for Yaya or any of the guests I'm about to share with you. This is next on the list here. Also very cool. Someone on the inside of a website that I like to call patreon.com. It's a big chunk of the way this show is made and has historically been made, and is the savior, the lifeline of like creativity on the internet. Like, I'm eager to talk about this with her too, because in a world where tech platforms have sucked all the monetary value out of the content that makes them great, i.e., advertising as a model is very hard and only works for people, organizations and people that have massive scale. So if you're not churning millions and bajillions of views and your costs are not low to create said content, it's really hard to make advertising work. And gosh, I don't know how long it's been now, 10-ish years. I'll do that homework, of course, and ask her as well. But Patreon came along as a way, as just like the smartest way to empower small creators and medium-sized creators by saying, hey, you can just I mean, I don't have to tell you if you're listening to this, but you can just support creators directly. And here's a mechanism by which you can get extra stuff, bonus content, behind the scenes, exclusive, et cetera, and just that whole machinery. In parallel with Kickstarter, when these two platforms came on the scene, it truly, in my humble opinion, I'm sure there's more to it than this, but like, they revolutionized what create. They didn't. Sorry, I'll step back for a moment. It didn't revolutionize creativity, but it made creativity possible for so many more people on the internet, because the internet is not sustainable in its current form without these types of platforms. So all that to say, Haley Rosenblum, Rosenblum, I'll find out that as well as we get closer to that interview. She is Patreon's head of online community. To my understanding, and we'll find out more, she is the community manager of Patreon. So if individual creators have their own communities, obviously we have our own here, as you know, and you are certainly a part of that. She is managing communities of communities and saying, like, what do creators need? What are the features that they need from the platform? But perhaps also, how are creators interacting with their audiences and with their communities? And is that happening on Patreon? Is it happening on other platforms? And how are we stitching all those together and making sure that everyone's needs are met? Because this is an evolving ecosystem, and the lifeblood of the internet does depend on a lot of this, and the financial stability of online creativity and the creator class really does hinge on a lot of this stuff and this work. And some of it is technology, and some of it is truly how are we managing those communities? And how are we keeping everyone safe? We've talked about trust and safety on this show. And how are we just keeping it fun and engaging across these channels? So really looking forward to talking with Haley about all this stuff and find out her background, where she comes from in this world before she came to Patreon. Also coming up probably in November. I mean, we're middle of October at this point. Happy spoopy season to all who celebrate Halloween, etc. A friend of mine, a personal friend, but someone who has also made just this extraordinary imprint on the world of internet creativity and fandom, etc. Sky Berkson, shameless plug. If you listen to my other podcast, which is called Colette and Matt Have Entered the Chat, it is a video game podcast that I do every week with my friend and colleague, Colette Bennett. She is also in the media biz and has been for the 10,000 years that I've been in it. Most notably from the days of Destructoid, which is one of the earlier video game websites that covered video game news, reviews, and communities and such. But she was one of the earliest she was among the earliest video game podcasters. So she and I have teamed up. If you are a video game fan, and you enjoy nerding out about game news and new releases and weird indie stuff that people are playing, and we don't. It's not a review show, but we just kind of hang out and talk about what's cooking in the video game world. Shameless self promotion. Go check out that show. You can listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. But I'm mentioning it to, number one, promote my show, of course. But number two, if you are already a listener of that fine program, you probably already know Sky because he has been our guest numerous times, and he graciously hops in to co-host with me when Colette is away or on vacation or swamped with work, etc. She has a very busy job. She works at Playboy.com, which you may have assumed is no longer with us, and it kind of was, but she is actually working to resurrect the brand and doing some pretty fucking awesome stuff over there as well. Any Hoozle, Sky Berkson co-hosts that show as a guest whenever his time permits. And the reason for that is because he is obsessed with games as much as I am. And he takes it one step further because he is an artist and he's a miniaturist, and he worked professionally doing like set design and like bigger like the builds for like not construction and not architecture, but like building set pieces for shows and shops and commercial retail spaces and whatever, but has now focused almost exclusively on miniature craft, specifically paper craft. So he takes his love of video games and he'll say, hey, this castle, this temple, this like set piece from Elden Ring or Bloodborne or Hollow Knight or Metroid or Super Mario Brothers, he'll look at that space in 3D, usually by like playing the game, and he will sketch out all the architectural details that are rendered in 3 dimensions inside a video game world. And then he will bring that out into like paper craft dioramas. And it's impossible for me to do this justice, but please do yourself a favor and Google Yaya to see her amazing cosplay. Google Sky Berkson to see these like extraordinarily detailed dioramas that really beautifully recreate these set pieces from our favorite video games. And then you sort of look at the photos and you see like, oh right, here's Sky's thumb, or here's his hand, and you realize, oh my god, this castle that is so intricate and amazing is like 3 inches tall. It's tiny. And his work has truly caught fire among video game enthusiasts like myself, and I'm sure many of you listening. so much so that he's doing like months long commissions for other big game streamers and YouTubers. That's a different show. We should do a show about YouTubers where it's people who chronicle their cancer diagnoses and their tumor extractions on YouTube. You know it exists. Not YouTubers, but YouTubers, video game YouTubers, such as the guy from Game Grumps, Aaron. I'm forgetting his last name. Ego Raptor is his streamer, handle, etc. And Jacksepticeye, who was huge. Both of these guys are huge. And so point is, they discovered his work and they say, hey, I love Monster Hunter. I love Bloodborne. Can you please make me this epic diorama out of paper for my bookshelf, for my study, for my office, whatever? And he is just doing these commissions for other famous influencers. So Sky and I go way back, and I ask him and talk to him about his work often. But I'm excited to like really dig in and talk about his process and his inspirations and all that amazing stuff. That is Sky. And then lastly on the docket, a woman that I met recently, we connected about a different project that I'm pretty excited about. Can't share more just yet. But her name is Karen Cassidy, and she is part of the Atlanta improv comedy scene. And like most stage performers during the pandemic, you couldn't do live shows. That was not safe. And of course, so she took it on the internet. And a lot of people had trouble adapting to the internet, adapting comedy and live performance to the web and social media. Not Karen. She kind of engineered these really funny sketches that are probably semi-scripted, but also like improv oriented. I'll ask her about her process, of course. A lot of them seem to be focused around these characters that are like Southern uppity teachers and like try hard moms. It's hard to explain exactly what I mean, but if you do Google her work, Karen with a K, and then it's Cassidy, Cassady, you'll see that these bits have millions of followers and millions of views and likes and because they're so relatable. And so I expected to, when I met Karen about this other project, I was like, oh, like, I love your work. Like, clearly you're doing this as like, a brand building side hustle. She's like, well, yeah, it started as that, but now she makes her whole living doing brand deals. It's just her as this like ridiculous mom character, moving through Target, using a Swiffer, blah, blah, whatever. It's just all these great brand integrations. And so in addition to being a performer on stage, she now has this whole line of work that never would have come about without the pandemic, without this sort of burst of creativity during the pandemic, which is a story we've told many times on the show. So very excited to bring Karen Cassidy on. And as I was doing research about her today, I learned that for like 2.5 seconds, she is one of the cooks on the famous / infamous viral video from Adult Swim, Too Many Cooks. If you don't know this video or don't remember it, I remember working in media, in digital meme coverage when Too Many Cooks appeared, and we were like, what the fuck is this? Oh my God, this is the weirdest, funniest, creepiest thing we've ever seen. And just, I don't know, man, if you don't know Too Many Cooks, just go watch it, Google it. It is among the most viral comedy videos of the last decade or so. And Karen's in it. And I didn't know that. And I was like, wow, well, there she is. Oh my God. So Karen's going to join me and we're going to have a fun time. For now, I just want to briefly pull on a thread that emerged from last week's episode and then dovetails into some news that happened this past week or so, which is my guest, Jennifer Jenkins, who is a law professor at Duke. Go back and listen to last week's episode if you haven't, because I know it sounds boring, but talking about copyright law, it truly was one of the most fun. Like, I don't book people unless I'm really excited about them, but like, I didn't know how fun and funny it would be to talk about intellectual property with a lawyer on this podcast, but it was a blast. And I really enjoyed Jennifer's vibe and her expertise, and we had a lot of fun. And something she said towards the end of the show, because inevitably we had to broach generative AI, which is at the heart of like all these philosophical conversations of like, what is art? Where do humans fit in? And if like large language models and visual generative models, ChatGPT, OpenAI, Midjourney, blah, 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 if they are trained on millions and billions of pieces of other people's copyrighted work and then synthesizing new images and new text from all that work, is that copyright infringement? Or is it the same as, a human or maybe thousands of millions of humans absorbing art and information and then creating new work from that information? And it's a very fascinating philosophical issue that I have really been conflicted on for a while. And Jennifer said something about it because we were talking about Content ID, which is platforms like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok had to respond to all of the copyright infringement that was going on because big corporations were saying, hey, people are uploading movies and clips of TV and songs to these platforms, and that's damaging our intellectual property rights. So these platforms had to devise these systems where it's like, hey, we can automatically detect when when copyrighted material is being uploaded, and then we can flow monetary compensation to the rights holder. Or what if the rights holder says no, take it down, we can demonetize or block the videos in whatever country, jurisdiction, blah, blah, blah. And despite its imperfections and its challenges, I said this last week, it's a really good system for attributing copyright to rights holders, because you simply cannot stop people from uploading their favorite songs to YouTube. Like you can't stop it, and it will forever be whack-a-mole unless you turn it into this system. And so that dovetailed into this conversation about generative AI, where it was like, wait, what if we had a way to identify whether these models if I say generate an image of a spaceship flying through, the Horsehead Nebula, generate an image of a sci-fi spaceship flying through this nebula. Could we have a way to track, like the image gets generated and then it's like, and then the model is like, hey, for this image, we used these 17 sci-fi images of a spaceship, and we use these 40 images from NASA, which are a public domain, and and then we use some language models from this to understand your text, and all of these things are identified as copyrighted work, and hey, all these people get 17 cents for that because a license holder of Midjourney, my subscription goes to pay for the work that was used to train the model that created this image. And Jennifer was like, yeah, people are already working on this. And I was like, oh, right. This isn't like the solution, but it is a way forward for rights attribution for these models. And we have some work to do to figure this out because these models are black boxes. Anywho, Adobe had its Adobe Max conference this past week or so. And I honestly don't follow it too closely. I don't follow it as closely as the other, the Google I/Os and the Meta, whatever is the Apple developer conferences or whatever. I've never been like a tech journalist, so I'm not really honing in on those. But Adobe announced its new video model, which is called its generative video and image model, which is called Firefly. And the way they are positioning it really struck me because they're showing it off, and it's just, at least the like demo images that they're showing are fucking mind blowing. It already, like within like a year or two, we went from these like really janky, watery, not blurry, but like jiggly, images to like, show me a dog, a golden retriever in a cornfield, and it's like, oh my God, I'm looking at video. I'm looking at real video from a real dog in a real cornfield that was really shot with a real camera. Asterisk, it was just synthetic. It was just generated in 2 seconds. It's terrifying. But again, the way Adobe is positioning this is like, it's a very sophisticated model. It's baked right into Photoshop and Premiere, which are the, obviously the apps that you would use to edit video, et cetera, et cetera. And they specifically said, this model is only trained on licensed images and public domain works. And it will never be trained on the work of the users of the software. Full stop. So let's presume for a hot second that we are trusting Adobe explicitly with that statement. And we don't necessarily have a reason not to, because as far as I know, they have not, Adobe, of all the tech companies, they have not been like big time privacy violators or liars when it comes to how their tech works or deceiving shareholders. They have a lot at stake when it comes to being forthright about how their tech works, because if they lie or mislead, they can get in big trouble from a regulatory or shareholder or whatever point of view. So let's say Adobe is 100% correct by saying that when I pay for an Adobe license to use these models and this software, I am paying for the right to use to have these models train on licensed images that Adobe has already paid rights holders to train their algorithms on. Then, in theory, we have an ethical AI model that can spin up literally anything you could imagine from a text prompt. And then I would like to experiment with these tools as a video producer who is concerned about the ethics of this stuff. Anyone can spin up this footage and build it directly into the workflow of their animation, film, digital video projects, and it's just right there on the timeline. So like, whereas I would pull in a stock video of a dog in a cornfield, or maybe I would go out and shoot something, I could just type up what I want, it generates, and then I just drop the clip into my project, and it's there, and it looks fucking real. Or it doesn't look real, and it looks like a cartoon, or it looks like a Pixar movie, or it's just it's wild. But it's very nice amid this just crazy bubble of AI bullshit and investment, which is surely a bubble. I'm not. Many people smarter than me who analyze the industry have said and will continue to say, every stupid company that's like, and try our AI thing. Hey, you're typing on LinkedIn and it's like, would you like AI to write? That's no, I do not want that because it's fucking stupid. But I can think of multiple projects in my work life and in my creative life where it's like, if I could, I am just a guy. And I'm not a 3D animator, and I don't have a film crew. So if I could just get a shot of a spaceship, which I am not capable of creating, the rest of this project, which is featuring humans and real whatever, real shots and whatever, would snap into place, and it would be awesome. That has real value to creativity. Will bad actors and shitty people and corporations use this to eliminate jobs and cut out the people, the creative, and dehumanize art and spread misinformation? Like 100%. We are in for a world of hurt, my friends. And it's gonna get fucked. But I'm cautiously optimistic that creative people can start to use these tools and maybe not feel like total guilty shitheads for using image generation. In combination with Jennifer Jenkins's idea and comment that and we should also compel companies to attribute where the models are being trained and create some sort of licensing structure where money and rights can flow to the correct parties, even if you end up using, let's say, a non-Adobe model. We are years away from solving this, but maybe we have the threads of how we can address some of this. I'm very fascinated by this. I will be following it closely, and I will be continuing to talk about it. I have one more thing just related to the Adobe stuff, and then I'll get out of here because I have a bit more work to do for next week's episodes coming up. But before I do, I must thank the people who support this show on Patreon. Every single person who contributes $1, $5, even $10 per month. And those $10 contributors are the executive producers. And their names are Bowie Barks, Dominic Kerr, Duran, and of course, William. They are supporting this show, and you can too, simply by listening in any podcast app or on YouTube. And I gotta say, you may want to hop over to the YouTube channel. Links in the description, of course, because as I mentioned, the next few episodes will really be very visual, which sucks for audio listeners. We're going to do our best to describe what we're talking about, of course, but if you want to see this amazing cosplay, papercraft, improv comedy, etc., and perhaps some of the creators that Haley from Patreon will be talking about, you can see those in video form as those conversations evolve. So head on over to the YouTube channel, give that channel a subscribe or a like if you are so inclined, and hop on over to the Patreon. Just subscribe to the newsletter because I just sent out an update sharing all those guests coming up, so you can leave questions and comments for those guests if you are a fan of them. Thank you to everyone who supports on Patreon and who subscribes and likes and smashes those buttons across any platform. Now, just piggybacking on the Adobe stuff, I don't know if this is connected to the generative stuff or if it is an adjacent project. But Adobe is also working on a project called it is a initiative, I should say, called Project Know-How, which is a tool. This was announced during the Sneaks segment at the Adobe Max conference. I don't know what that means exactly. It is designed to identify artwork online, but also like IRL on like surfaces. So t-shirts, tote bags, tumblers, posters, whatever. At first, it's like, okay, this is like Google Lens, but more importantly, Project Know-How, this is from The Verge. Project Know-How builds on Adobe's content credentials tech. So I guess that's similar to Content ID on YouTube. which applies a digital tag to track where a piece of content has been posted, who owns it, and how it's been manipulated. So, providing an image or video has content credentials applied. The tool can help creators establish ownership over their content, even if that authentication metadata has been stripped out. So, yeah, that's very cool. So, I suppose if I'm a creator and I know my content it might be, memed or stripped out or used in various places, even on the outside world to make t-shirts or whatever, I can somehow embed a tag that says, hey, this design was mine. And if it gets out there, I can identify it, spot it, and then perhaps issue a takedown or a cease and desist, or just say, hey, I know you stole it, but when you sell that t-shirt, please send me, 5 cents for every whatever. How this connects to licensing apparatus will be very interesting. Um, Going on The Verge's article here, this could solve a multitude of gripes that artists face around how to protect their work. It's a common issue for art and designs to be posted on online platforms like Pinterest and Twitter, X, without crediting the original creator. I mean, this is the story of the internet for the last 25 years of just like, hey, this thing that someone made, let me just lift it, create something else out of it. It's very fascinating. And then if, Adobe is working on AI generative imagery, and then if you can build this content credential system into that system to say, hey, this new image was generated by learning from all these other content credentialed images, and then can we create a global content ID attribution system across the entire web? Or is it specific to a platform? Could it only work on Adobe, and then all these other platforms have to create their own systems? Can we regulate these attribution systems to say, hey, YouTube can have YouTube, and Adobe can have Adobe, and TikTok can have its TikTok. Hey. But you all must have an interoperable licensing identification system so that rights holders don't get ripped off. I don't know if any of this was possible, but that's my idea. And also, I think I mentioned this on last week's show, none of this happens with indie podcasters and indie artists and indie video game developers saying like, I'm an artist and I'm concerned about generative AI. No, I care. But fucking regulators and governments don't give a shit. The only thing that's set, that sucks. That sucks. Full stop. The only thing, hopefully I'm wrong, but I'm going to cynically say the only thing that's going to move these needles are big fucking corporations suing the shit out of these tech companies and forcing them and regulators to compel them to create these systems voluntarily or legally, compelling them or otherwise. That is how these systems get pushed into place. And I don't have it cited here, but there was just a story yesterday or the day before where the Wall Street Journal and News Corporation and Dow Jones, whatever, a variety of online publishers, I think book publishers too, HarperCollins or Random House, whatever the fuck. These big corporations, these conglomerates are now starting to sue. They're starting to get their legal ducks in a row to bring lawsuits against generative AI companies. And so I think we're suddenly seeing legal challenges and tech companies getting out ahead and saying like, hey, what if we could identify whose work is whose? Hey, what if we could generate synthetic media ethically and legally? Hey, you probably stole all this shit. How are we gonna pay? What do you call it? Remunerations? I don't know. Multiple things rising at the same time to meet this challenge, and perhaps that could compel a sea change around generative stuff. Next 6 months will be fascinating to watch. I'll be watching it. I'll be covering it here. I'll be hopefully bringing creators and experts and lawyers and journalists on to talk about it more, because I need people who are smarter than me. I'm not qualified to figure this stuff out. I've got ideas, but none of them are going to work. If you have thoughts, questions, ideas, people I should be talking to, get on in the comments. Put them in the video comments. Put them in the Patreon comments. Send an email, influencepod69@gmail.com. And leave a voicemail. That's the best way to do it, because then your voice is on the show. It's an audio medium. Oh, by the way, check out the Verge cast. I don't usually listen to it. Spectacular episode. I'll link it in the show notes, about what is a podcast, what is the history of podcasts, and sort of where we are in the podcasting world. There was all this money, a lot of like Hollywood money rushing into podcasting because, it's very expensive to make TV and movies, but like podcasts are hot. So we're going to put a bunch of investment into podcasts. I was working on one such project, and then the podcast ecosystem collapsed, quote unquote, air quotes, if you're watching the video version. Except it didn't. It was just a lot of Hollywood people realizing that they couldn't get big returns on limited series because podcasts are recurring things. They're people you want to hang out with. They're parts of people's lives. People don't necessarily seek out like documentary narrative things or fictional narratives. Like, that's not what podcasting has historically been. So anyway, the Vergecast has this excellent analysis with some really good experts and even people like the people who coined the term podcast. It was popularized by Steve Jobs, obviously with the iPod, but there were people in the space before who kind of coined that term. Anywho, it's a great episode. I just was listening to it today, and I think it's worth your time. I'll share a link of that to that in the show notes. But that's what's on my mind. I would love to hear what's on your mind. So anyway, point is, call in the voicemail line, talk to me, ask questions of future guests. And as always, please be kind. Rewind your podcasts after you're done listening to them, and I will talk with you in 1 week's time.